We're bringing a lot of experience, both with working with readers at all levels and how they confront their text. But we're also bringing the experience of introducing, or helping introduce the Truth Commission to South Africa in the early 1990s, and really helping launch the whole field of transitional justice, which you'll hear about. And so we are both excited intellectually, almost sort of theoretically, but more practically, about how you deal with the past. Is when people talk about the past, at least when they talk about it from an analytical point of view, they use keywords like acknowledgement, accountability, restitution, compensation, reparation. But nobody uses the word understanding. And what we did in this class was understand each other a little bit more than our titles gave us, right? And so I think one of the things in particular from our perspective that we really want, not only for this class and this material, but frankly for the world at large, is to add the word understanding to the lexicon of words we use about dealing with the past. Say two or three quick things that I think will be a framework going forward. One is that we're often told by scientists it's more important to focus on how we think than what we think. Because how we think is deeply unconscious, with limited conscious access to what shapes our thinking. And at your school, there's a brilliant neuroscientist at Northeastern who has a book coming out on emotions. And she says emotions, or another way of putting it, our unconscious brain shapes all our mental states. And paradoxically, we couldn't be rational without our unconscious brain, or our emotional brain.
Awesome. These are some of the questions that are going to come up again and again. One question that's going to come up almost right away is the if question, namely, should we deal with the past at all? Or maybe you start with the language of turning over a new page, let bygones be bygones. Famously, I believe in Cambodia, after the Khmer Rouge massacres, when the international community was pressuring Cambodia, its prime minister said, what we need to do with the past, we need to dig a big hole and bury it and move on. That is politically extremely popular. But the second question is how we deal with it, right? What kind of tools are there for excavating a terrible past? Tim spoke about South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. After World War II, the victorious Allies imposed war crime trials on the defeated Axis powers, mainly on Germany, a little bit on Japan too. It was a very different experience in Japan than it was in Germany. Maybe there's some kind of official commission of historians that is invited to excavate. Perhaps museums are created, perhaps some kind of combination of all of these. There are what's called lustration policies, which are essentially administrative purge policies like denazification and de-Ba'athification. They don't have a very good track record, and yet they're very often used.
One more thing on the how that I just want to flag is at what level do you work on it? I mean, I think a lot of the assumptions about dealing with the past come from the field of psychology, which has a lot to do with the individual. But we're talking about individuals, we're talking about communities, we're talking about nations, and then relationship between nations. And so I think flagging that question of it, at what level do you address it, and using which tools?
Then there's the one question. Maybe the most spectacular recent example of that is from Via's country in Spain. Franco dies. Spain transitions slowly to democracy. And both under Franco and in the Civil War that preceded World War II and preceded Franco's rise to power, there were hundreds of thousands of people murdered by both sides, but mainly by the fascists, right? And the question becomes in, what was it, 75 or 77? 75, right? So Franco exits the picture, and then the usual question becomes, all right, there's millions, literally, of dead bodies, people tortured, people accused in kangaroo trials. How do we deal with this, and can we have a democracy if we don't come to terms with this terrible set of crimes that's been created? And the Spaniards decided that if they did deal with it at all, the whole thing would explode, that it was a powder keg. And remarkably, they agreed on something that was literally called the Pact of Forgetting, Pacto del Olvido, in which they decided that it would not be discussed. Kind of like some of the points that you made about your own family histories, how some stuff was never said. It was out of conversation in Spain for a long time, for more than 30 years. Next question is why, and this is like, why deal with the past at all? So if the if question has been answered in the affirmative, is there an argument for dealing with the past? And we've surfaced some of the more usual answers already. Namely, we have this sense that people who don't acknowledge their past perhaps are at a greater risk of repeating it. By the way, that may be empirically false. I'm not sure that's true. It sounds good, but it may not be true. Are there other arguments? Are there other reasons to deal with one's past? What Soch is referring to, just kind of putting us all on the same page, is that Switzerland for many years tried to promote itself as a sort of safe haven for refugees. And as it turned out, historically, they made every effort to make sure that as few Jews as possible made it to Switzerland, including pretty sophisticated ways of identifying who was Jewish so that they wouldn't let them in. And then they also gave away bank accounts and assets of Jews that were held in Swiss banks as a kind of political bribe to essentially be left alone by some of the powers. And so, so it is surprising, and one of the ways in which it is surprising is, look, I mean, even in our personal lives, we like to tell flattering stories about ourselves, right? Nobody likes to be presented as a jerk. And something like that is true in politics as well. And maybe for our why question, maybe one of the reasons of addressing the past after war is if you leave the story of the past to the specific countries, you're going to kind of hear really happy, good stories. And they're not necessarily going to be true.
To my point earlier about Northern Ireland, the question is, whose truth is being told in this case? So it's one thing, all historians are really presenting a point of view. It doesn't mean this is the accurate truth. And the same thing of coming in as a truth commission is, in a sense, the first draft of a history, but a particular focus. And the question is, well, wait a minute, whose story is being told in this history? And so this is, even in this context, there is a nation called the United Kingdom. But in Northern Ireland, Catholics don't view themselves as really part of the United Kingdom. So you have this competition. But you have this fundamental question at stake today still in Northern Ireland, which is, who's true?
And don't we all have mythologies about ourselves? You don't get accepted into the school that you wanted to go to. You turn the school that you do go to into, well, actually, that turned out for the best because A, B, and C. And we all tell these kind of stories.
I was a straight A student here.
Actually, I wanted to pick up on that because it's been exactly that point has been kind of underlying it, and I actually think that we need to include some readings about the notion of narrative. And there's a lot of research that we've been involved with recently about how narratives are the way in which we process our experience, meaning, and our social world. And the good news is that we know a lot about narratives. The basic premise is that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the beginning, in this case, is the past. And what beginning we choose to start with is critical. And I think one of the critiques that I have personally of historians, and this is editorializing here, is that they focus on, and I say that, by the way, my grandfather, who I mentioned, is a historian, my father's a historian, and my mother's a historian. So that's a whole separate session. But historians focus on the past and how that shapes the present. But the task of leadership and the people that we deal with are asked to shape the future, and so they have to tell a different kind of narrative. And I think it would be worthwhile actually to bring some of those insights from neuroscience, because we now know that try and explain where you are now, as Nir said, without telling a story with a beginning